jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show.
Join us as we cover many an insane movie and numerous cult TV phenomenons. Are you ready to get jacked up? Are you with us? Then listen on.
Listener discretion is advised. It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show.
And welcome back. Our good old pal Jen Chambers is back here. We're going into one.
Hello.
Yeah, we're going into one uncanny
Friends.
dramedy with a small sidebar on another show that came before that's kind of similar, but we're mainly talking about House M.D.
Very good show. Very good show.
Very
Excited. Excited.
Very good, very good.
Yes.
Okay, so I gotta ask you the magic question. When did you see this from the start, or were you late to the show and saw it in reruns?
No, I started this show about the time that he lost the team, the first team. And if obviously if you're familiar with House and you're listening to this, then you must be somewhat familiar with House. So I would say that was season 3. It probably started.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So
Season
I guess
3.
I saw it from the start, and it was just one of those, my parents and uncle were watching it, and I just was watching it in the room while I was diddling around on the computer in the same room, and it was just one of those, like, okay, so they're having a more edgy, kind of off-color kind of drama, so that's interesting.
It was very easy to watch just episodes because you didn't really have to have some kind of backstory. One of those
No,
other
not at all.
things that you didn't have to follow along, kind of like when we talked about SVU, how you could pick up an episode here and there.
Oh, totally. And
It was more about medical mystery and stuff. So I think that's what
Mhm.
drew me into it, and then brought me back to watching old ones, and from there. So,
totally. So this is basically everyone's intro to Olivia Wilde, Jennifer Morrison,
oh yeah,
and then Robert Shaw and Lynn are, you probably knew him from Dead Poet Society, but here, this is a bigger TV role for him than Jesse
Oh, yeah.
Spencer years before Chicago Fire. So what's funny is I used to get him mixed up with Dr. Gray, that character actor on Criminal Minds, and everyone just was looking at me like, how'd you get those two mixed up? I'm like, I don't even know.
Peter Jacobson, who has a lot of supporting roles, but he did a good arc on SVU for a while, and
Yeah, so used to seeing him play, just kind of, him and Lisa Edelstein were both in that one Jack Nicholson movie that was such a wild thing, As Good as It Gets. I just guffawed. I'm like, oh, okay. Someone see that movie and put the two of them in this.
kind of who else? There was Amber, is it Tamblyn? Is that her? That she played Amber, I believe.
Yeah, there you go. Omar
she
Epps.
Yeah. Just then that was a lot, but there's just tons. It was a very
Cal
big.
Penn, same time as all those other shows, Harold and
Yes.
Kumar.
Cal Penn left. Now Cal Penn left abruptly because he was offered a position in Obama's inside group.
Yep.
When Obama was elected, he was offered a position, and that's why they cut his character short. So
when we talked about Designated Survivor, he wrote a lot of the speeches on that show, and so it was interesting how we just kind of tracked how he just keeps kind of evolving as some kind of public speaker and as an actor. So it's very interesting.
yeah, he does. He kind of, but yeah, I guess he was very gifted with a lot of that stuff. So Guess it's always
Now,
good to have a background to fall back on.
oh, totally. Speaking of Law and Order, so I did some digging into David Shore. I had no idea that he was a lawyer. That
Really?
he had written for Due South, and I had seen some of his episodes of credits on NYPD Blue in The Practice, but I had no idea he was also on a short-lived show on CBS called Hack, which had David Morse kind of going around. He was kind of like the equalizer. But then he also was an executive producer on Family Law, and his episode, he was twice nominated for an Emmy for being a producer on Law and Order. So I'm like, okay, interesting. It's a bunch of different, totally different credits. And you were telling me before we began how we were going to kind of parallel this with his latest show, The Good Doctor, which was a remake of a South Korean show. How do you think those two compare to one and the other? Are they kind of just similar or totally different?
I think that they're both very witty in that respect. I can see both the intelligence in them, so I definitely see that.
Okay.
As far as dark, though, House was definitely a lot darker.
Oh yeah, totally a dark
that
comedy.
feeling of heaviness. Yeah, it definitely had that darkness to it. Whereas The Good Doctor is definitely a lot lighter.
He has a funny quote here. I started thinking that I see. Oh, totally. And he has a funny quote here. I started thinking that I should move to Hollywood and be funny. Turned out I was more dramatic than funny.
Yeah.
And he's from Canada, and he was practicing law in London, of all things. So I wonder if that's how he got a connection to Hugh Laurie, who, was a British actor.
Might be. I was reading that Hugh Laurie was actually kind of famous itself in London for the longest time before he even came over.
I was so used to seeing him as the dad in Stuart Little and a few other things. He's one of the thieves, I think, in 101 Dalmatians, the live action one. So it's like I had always seen him in bit parts, but I had not seen the comedy show he did with Stephen Fry for the longest time until years after House. But Shore had also just done a bunch of other stuff like the UK show Century City, as well as The Outer Limits, the newer one in the 90s in Canada. So, but he has another funny quote here. Canadian television so often fails for the same reason American movies so often fail. They're not controlled by writers. Now, I'm biased on this one. There are obviously great, smart directors out there and great, smart producers, but no one knows the story like the writer. American movies are controlled by directors. Canadian TV is controlled by producers. American TV is controlled by writers. I'm like, that's an interesting parallel, because it's like so often we'll just look at the first few names, and the director's like the last credit you see on an episode, so everyone's like, oh, they had everything involved with the episode. I'm like, not necessarily. They could have been dismissed by the producer or creator.
It is, yeah. Oh, wow.
Noted. I've been an extra, and I have seen that happen plenty of times, and it's not hostile like one would think. It's just kind of more so-and-so, director so-and-so, you are dismissed for the day. Thank you. It's like,
and they just move on.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of creatives.
So let me ask this: what can you tell me, since you've looked into this? What did he do previously before? Anything that? So
you didn't hear any of the shows I listed?
Yeah, let me hear the first one I missed. Let me go back to your. We'll have to cut this out, but. Let me hear. I want to hear one of the first ones that you had heard. I missed the first.
He did the first season of The Practice.
The first season of Practice. That's the one I wanted to see. Okay, that's where the name came familiar. Okay, the first season of Practice, and what was the other one?
He had written individual episodes of stuff like NYPD Blue and The Outer Limits.
It was The Practice. Okay, that's David Shore and The Practice. That was another one. It wasn't necessarily dark, but it was very intelligent. I mean, just very witty.
Right. It was a David E. Kelly joint. And that's interesting because, Kelly was also a lawyer turned screenwriter. So I'm sure they all kind of just blended. It's like, how can we make an off-color, drama? And
it'd be funny to look at some of these people and look at what their former careers are in your list of that we look at all these. We should definitely always try to check out see what their former career was.
We're so used to seeing people who are like former like cops or soldiers, but yeah, it's not often you see someone who's like a former legal guy. And
Yeah, that just
has
turned
anyone
this.
has anyone who's been a former doctor ever become a writer? And I don't think I can think of that. The closest I think is what's his name? Kim Jeong from The Hangover and Community did a sitcom which was based on his medical practice life.
Yeah. Yep.
But that's about all I can think of.
No, that would be an interesting show because we always joke around and we try to rate the best shows that are the most accurate for medical procedures or medical stories. And so that would be kind of neat to see a doctor actually do
You're
that, get in
right.
there and rate that. Yeah, kind of to go in there because most shows hire, they hire, people who come in and take a look to make sure that you're trying to be as accurate as you can.
Or at
But I
least
don't think you're right.
plausible. Yeah, it's a
Believable.
hard individual thing to do because there's always going to be someone who just doesn't like how that actor interprets the role, regardless of how much research they do. Versus, I mean, most of the medical shows, they're not going to do the whole, air to mouth thing. They're just going to go instantly into the, clear, and
Well, and it's TV. I mean, they don't have time to do it all. I mean,
they don't.
You get what recording time do they get into a drama? What is the actual record time for a drama? It's like what 40 something like 42 minutes for a drama.
And,
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like a lot of people should watch a sci-fi show and before they do a sci-fi movie because they can probably realize how so much of their material is just too terribly stretched over a long period of time. And it's so hard because basically the screenwriting rule is, one page equals a minute. But anyone who knows, has been in there long enough knows that individually it may not be that long a period, or there might be individual shots that focus on someone longer and it comes down to 3 minutes.
Yeah, it could be completely different than what you
And you
have
can't
in
write
mind.
action like any description of action like so and so runs down the hall or so and so gets in a 5-minute shootout. That on paper it's like less than a quarter of that page. So it's just so interesting how what gets translated, it's very easy for someone to leave a plot hole and go, oh, shoot, how did we intend for that to end? I left it to the director to decide. Oh, I left it to the other producers to decide. I don't know how that.
And I kind of wonder how that ends up when they start all together onto this, this plot, and then it ends up not reaching it to where it needs to be because it gets lost in,
Right.
direction.
And then it gets even more complicated when you go into the editing room and it just so happens the scene got deleted just like a movie, or they just abandoned the whole storyline because a member of the cast just moved on, and so they didn't want to focus on that person anymore. That whoever their replacement is, that's who that storyline is now going to.
Now, did any of these executive producers ring a bell to you when they're talking about at the very beginning? Because they were talking about it was co-produced at the beginning with Heel and Toe Films, Bad Hat Harry Productions. They're
Bad Hat
saying
Harry
some of these
was by Brian Singer, who's now
Yep.
infamous. But yeah, at the time I knew it was interesting seeing his name because he was producing, his company was producing that and the new Battlestar Galactica, and he was a hit with Usual Suspects and X-Men. So, but yeah, Shore, I think that's
Or
pretty
has
much
the Shore Z Productions.
So there you go. And
Yep.
I think this was his first giant launch in the tube. He had been working just nonstop, as a supporting writer, and this was like, I think this is going to be what he's basically remembered for just the rest of his life, mainly because I mean he's done other shows, like he collaborated with a buddy cop comedy called Battle Creek with the Breaking Bad producers, and then he did another show called Sneaky Pete, which lasted about 3 seasons on Amazon. It had Bryan Cranston.
I liked Sneaky Pete.
And it was just so wild because it's a really good show, but it had a totally different showrunner. Graham Yost of Speed and Justified fame was the showrunner, and it was one of those is like Shore got the creator credit, but he then realized he had a schedule dilemma or something, and then he had to pull out, and so he's like, well, I've created this show, but I can't run it, so we have to assign someone new to be in charge of it. But yeah, so now he's running The Good Doctor, and it's just kind of interesting how I'm just waiting for him to do some unusual crossover with this in-house.
There you go.
Just sneak it in there. Just say it's the same exact hospital or something.
So at the beginning of the first season, the writers were, and I'll say a couple of their names and see if any of these people are kind of familiar with you. So the staff writers were Lawrence Kaplow, Peter Blake, Thomas Moran. Are those any of those ringing a bell to you?
Peter Blake sounds familiar, but I could be thinking of someone else. So I'm looking into this now. But I know Paul Edelstein, who you might know. Didn't he become the showrunner? Paul Edelstein.
I think he eventually did. Now, Peter Blake did work on The Practice also, so that's probably where he got his start. I'm sure he followed David Shore over from when he went over there.
Mainly, I just knew the directors of it. Like Frederick King Keller did a few episodes. He's done a bunch of TV, like The Pretender. But Greg Yatanes was probably the most impressive because I don't know if you've seen it, but he worked a lot on shows like Banshee and Prison Break. But he also did a really good job on that Discovery Channel show that's now on Netflix, Manhunt Unabomber.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I saw his credit on that and the new Twilight Zone, I was like, it makes so much sense. He began with House, and that was where he kind of found his whole vibe of just doing all these psychological character studies. That's his
shtick. Yeah.
That's his deal. Yeah, that's his. Yeah. Leslie Linka Glatter, Homeland fame, directed a few episodes too. So he's like, this was a backup for a lot of people. But Paul Edelstein was like one of the producers on it, and you might know him as one of the co-creators of shows like Homicide. So,
oh wow, that's a big name right there.
That's pretty surreal. There's definitely some similar mental breakdowns and daydreaming in either show, and they're both interesting. It's like Homicide is just a character study of unusual types in Baltimore that uses the cop formula to get your attention, and much like this in St. Elsewhere, this just uses a medical setting to apprehend your attention, but it's really just about a nutty antisocial guy who's top of his class doctor.
I was looking through this. So when they were looking for actors for House,
Rowan Atkinson, I remember for the longest time was supposed to be on here.
They were looking at it. They were looking at. So it looks like House. So Hugh Laurie did his audition so well, and he actually used an umbrella for a cane.
Ooh, okay.
But he did it so well that they were not aware that he was English due to his convincing American accent. He credits it to his misspent youth watching too much TV.
There you
and too many movies.
Were you
also
familiar with pretty much all the rest of the cast before this, or was this pretty much your first foot in the door?
I'm trying to get back and to think. The only people that I ever really recognized were, of course, there was the arc that, if I can look this up, there was the arc that the cop was just out to get House.
The cop. Are you thinking of the main administrator asshole?
No, well, him is very recognizable, but then also the cop that House that was going to get was trying to get him convicted of all of his prescription forgeries. Do you remember who I'm talking about? That little arc they had.
Was that David Morse's character?
I don't.
No, I'm thinking of someone else then.
No,
sorry.
You're thinking of somebody else. You're thinking of. Do you remember the show, the movie? Isn't it so sad I have to take you to movies to get a character? Do you remember the movie with Nicolas Cage and Sean Connery? And
David Morse is in that, so I think that's who I'm thinking of.
Oh, that is. Then it is Dave Morse. Thank you.
Yeah, Ed Harris's right hand who.
Yes, thank you. It is him. Yes.
Also from St. Elsewhere. So yeah. Yeah, no.
I'd like to take you around this total event here to
find
what I was looking for. Yeah.
But yeah,
seriously, that's who all I recognize pretty much is just the characters.
I know my parents were somewhat familiar, like they're like, I know I've seen Omar Epps and Robert Leonard and other stuff, Lisa Edelstein was interesting because this definitely, I think, upped her character status. But yeah, prior to that, just going through West Wing, it was interesting seeing her on there as one of Rob Lowe's girlfriends. And so it was like, yeah, this is everybody.
I remember
basically,
that we watched one of our covers in West Wing, and I saw that, and I said, "Oh, look at that, it's Cuddy." So yeah, I was
there
like,
you go. Is like everyone here is basically second or third, maybe fourth stage of their career, and they're on this show. And what did you think of Ceelo Ward as House's deceased spouse, Stacey Warner?
oh, I was thinking the very first episode, or the first season. She was, I think she was good. It wasn't my favorite part of the arc. I mean, I wasn't a big fan of the whole story of it. Her acting is great. I'm not saying that I didn't like that, but it wasn't my favorite part of the whole
Well, yeah,
story
first
arc.
season, the whole thing is very uncomfortable, but it's also
Yeah,
very
I mean,
intriguing.
it is. I mean, it was, kind of like it was, but that's what they did on this show is they like to push it. They pushed the envelope, definitely.
Hmm.
So I guess it was
It's
okay.
interesting because I mean, she'd just been in TV land just for years. She'd been the deceased character's also a doctor, trying to be arrested in The Fugitive, and so and then goes on to other big shows and like CSI New York, the first season of FBI. But yeah, I definitely recognized her from this, and it was just kind of interesting how the title character just pretty much you never know if he's going to be more snappy or more reserved until like he just opens his mouth. It's just a totally different kind of comprehension of just you can be cool 1 minute and then just hot-headed the next. And it's definitely another rarity of just showing someone who might be an unapproachable person and then making them be a fascinating and intriguing person for primetime TV. So
Well, he's the most intriguing character, I think, of television that they've had in a long time. I mean,
I know people who hate medical dramas who have basically bought the whole series on Blu-ray. They love this character study.
I have. This is one of the series I have on TV.
Oh, nice.
Just
Perfect.
I don't have many, but this is one of them that I have.
2004 was a
I
big
do,
year.
and they had good stories. I mean, I have favorite episodes. Definitely.
Okay,
that,
perfect.
We go through. I do have fun facts.
Fun facts.
We should call this Jen's Fun Facts. A little launch music with it. Jen's Fun Facts. 25 things you didn't know about House. At one point, House was the most watched TV show in the world.
I was able to see that fact, and they said 08, so that would have been season 5. I'm like, that makes sense. It was still pretty hot. It was.
What was going on in season 5 that was like the best going on? Was that the year that they had all the students trying to bid for a spot on the team?
I think so, and I often mix that with season 3 or 4. But it was interesting how it just kind of kept going on, and then I think by 2010, that's when I guess some people lost track of it. I hadn't watched it for a while, and then I saw a bunch of episodes because it would often come on before or after something else on Fox, like 24 or Bones. So I was just like, okay. So,
yeah, I kind of the last season was not. I kind of stopped watching it. I guess I'm not the most diehard fan if I didn't finish. It just got to be very
too much.
lukewarm the last season.
What's so funny is I saw the finale and I thought it was a really good episode, but I did have trouble watching any other episode in that same damn final season. So it's like, yeah, it's a rarity. It's like they knew how to end it.
Well, after doing our research and hearing, some of the actresses or some of the people came back for it, the season finale, I'm going to have to go back and watch it. But according to the AFP, 81.8 million people tuned in to watch Dr. House around the globe that year in 2008. So that was
Didn't
4
they
years
say
after
somewhere
it debuted.
That, yeah, I'm not at all surprised by the international appeal of it. I mean, it's still broadcast and rerun on plenty of other channels like Heroes and Icons and other NBC Fox division channels. But or were you surprised? I mean, haven't they tried to adapt this in other countries, like Israel
so.
or Germany?
They might have. Yeah, that's probably something I should look up.
And it's just so funny. I would always see that influence some way. They're like on some other medical or crime examination show. They would just always kind of take from this. There was this one show called Backstrom that had Rainn Wilson from The Office, and it was like a remake of like some other UK show. And then when it premiered, it only lasted one season. They wrapped it all up, but everyone was like, yeah, he's kind of a mixture of everything, but most notably, Rainn Wilson is basically doing his best Hugh Laurie as Dr. House impression. And I was like, well, that's kind of why I like it even more. It's very atypical. It's just on after Bones, and it's got an unusual story, let alone character development.
It's just people weren't used to seeing people like Gregory House because people usually kept their mouth shut. So it was refreshing to see somebody be able to open their mouth, you know.
Yeah, because you'll see how, I mean, there's definitely, much like with doctors or let alone with just other authority figures, you'll see them lose their cool one day. I mean, we've all had a boss or even a professor who, you know, we've been around, and, you know, one minute they're cool and another day they're just off the rocker. They're just not, you know, approachable. And so I think he blends a lot of those kind of dilemmas where it's just like, okay, you know, neither a good or a bad person, good willing, and person.
He was really kind of an awful person sometimes.
Right.
When you think about it, he really was kind of an awful person sometimes. But he really was actually, you know, vindicated sometimes in ways. So there actually is a lot of deep meaning in House when you think about it. As dark as it gets kind of deep with a lot of his, you know, a lot of stuff with him.
Mm-hmm. And it was interesting. It never really got all that graphic, in my opinion, with the medical stuff, but every once in a while there would be like, ooh, that looks like that really hurts.
Yeah. He doesn't have a lot of his bedside manner is like non-existent.
Yeah. Oh man.
But I tell you, you know, sure would rather have him on my case
right.
than anybody else, definitely.
It makes you wonder if he even considers himself a human, especially with that line, everybody lies. It's like,
no, he's just
does he even, it's like he could win all the accolades and he wouldn't want to show up at the award show.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, he's just that kind of guy.
I think there was an episode where it's all about the game. It's not about saving somebody. It was about the game to him, solving the puzzle, not about saving the life. So, you know, I wonder if there's a psychology of House, what he was in there. So House actually had a hidden meaning from the very beginning. Take the title itself. In medical jargon, a patient with a history of drug use or addiction is referred to as a house. The acronym stands for history of use. This is because we learned from the very beginning, House himself, well, he has a Vicodin habit. And House's first working title was Chasing Zebras Circle the Drain, which is also based on medical jargon in doctor speak. Zebra is code for a strange diagnosis while circling the drain, which means a patient is terminal.
Jeez. So they're already using that and not wearing eye protection while doing surgery. So they're definitely taking, you know, I never consider a doctor show a documentary, but there are some people is like they just can't watch any kind of fiction because it just takes them out of it. I always kind of like to assume, especially with shows that involve like a prison or a medical ward, that there's like doing it, or even a cop show, is like they're just doing a medical, an experimental unit. Just because it's not common practice doesn't mean you can't actually do it. So, I mean, it's kind of one of those things is like, take it with a grain of salt. Otherwise, you'll never get through any program if you're that nitpicky.
Yeah, you won't. It's you nitpick and you can't. That's why they have these doctors watch medical dramas and nitpick everything. And it's just like, just watch the TV show, please.
We had a cool pal on to discuss Rosalian Isles, and we talked about how basically they're doing the proper procedure of dispatching bodies and autopsies, and then like the last 3 seasons they just say fuck it, they just don't do it anymore, and it's like, well, to be fair, the story was the most captivating at that, so you lose some, you gain some. You had a question before we began as to why the title sequence Teardrop by the electronic band Massive Attack was missing from later seasons. I found
Yes, they changed it like suddenly. It was like one.
I found a IMDb trivia. It said in many European countries, an original piece of music composed by 2 people was used due to rights issues with that song. And from the second season onwards, a new intro composed by 2 different people was used. So it makes me wonder if they were just having rights issues and they just said finally, okay, fine, we'll change it. So that's my speculation.
So what's your choice? Which one do you like better?
I don't even remember the other ones since I'm a Massive Attack fan.
You have a preference? I don't know. Maybe we should like pull them up here in a bit and listen to them. We can decide. That we'll probably get dinged on copyright issues for that. So
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, Massive Attack is just my jam. You might know them from other songs like Angel, which was used in a few movies and trailers. They're an England band who use a bunch of different guest vocalists, and I've always just kind of dug how
I think they're on my Pure Mood CD, I believe, or something like that, aren't they?
They probably are, because they have just a huge international kind of draw.
They're on my I have I like that kind of music, so I think they're on like a couple of my Mood CDs. So yeah, they're pretty cool. So I probably would have to go with them if I had to choose, because I know that there's one I didn't like, and it's not the one that we're talking about, because I have to get through the first season of listening to the other one until I can get to the other. So that's how I feel about that. So yeah, I like that one. So yeah, you're probably right. It probably was copyright issues, which is just like with Scrubs. I have to deal with
and that's a good segue, because Dr. Cox and House are often compared. John C. McGinley's character on that. Wrong. So,
yes. One of my favorite characters on Scrubs is the most talented.
It's funny. Man. I got into both basically around the same time. Scrubs was big still by 04, and that's the same year House came out. And I was already kind of drawn to House because I just saw all these actors who I've semi-seen in all these other blockbuster movies that played on TV, especially Chi McBride. I'm like, oh, he's been and so when I see him on other big shows like Boston Public and Hawaii Five-0 and what's the other one, Human Target, I was like, but I'll always know him as just that asshole bureaucrat on House. He just played that role so well, and
everyone. He was so good. He was so talented on that. Good story.
Kind of became the formula, is like, who is gonna try and tell House to get out of their hospital next season?
Yeah. But it was a really good story arc.
So we talked about Scrubs before. How it's like, I think you said you gave it up by like season 5, and I never really
for House.
Oh no for Scrubs.
Oh, for Scrubs, I did watch Scrubs all the way through. I mean, even if I didn't like the silliness of it, as it got sillier and sillier, I still loved the show so much.
I watched a shit ton of it, and by 06, it was being like replayed like nonstop on Comedy Central every other hour. So I was just like,
I mean, I watched it all. I mean, I watched
funny
it all
enough,
from
my cousins were obsessed with it, and here's the thing, they didn't get any TV, that their parents didn't allow them that, but they were watching plenty of YouTube clips and other stuff. They had their internet resources, so next thing you know, they've seen all the seasons and were as caught up as my sister. And I never watched it in any chronological order, but it was just so funny because it's like everyone just had their own favorite character on that show. They would have. You
realize that we're gonna have to do one more podcast about Scrubs here.
Maybe.
Maybe. We're covering them all here now. Scrubs is good. They've got some good writing there.
I had some pals who liked the final season, and I could not get into the final season at all. When it switched networks, it was just a total joke, and a really bad joke at that, where it's just like, okay, so you're introducing all these new guys. Everybody else is basically credited but not appearing in like even barely 5 episodes. So it's might as well just be a bad spinoff. And it's
I just really really liked the writing in season. Okay, first of all, the writing in season 1 and season 2 were completely different. But I really liked the writing also in season 2 and season 3. In season 4, it slightly started to change. Probably the end of season 3, it started to change.
They started doing a lot of stunt casting and guest spots.
Yes, in season 4, it started to change even more. But end of season 4, it started to get super flurry. Like really super silly. By season 5, it was just all right. Come on now, And season 6, it was just like, okay, this is ridiculous. Everything was so funny anymore. Everything was just unbelievably funny, and like nothing was serious anymore.
Right, and I mean they would time on Scrubs the dramatic episodes really well, and yet after a while it kind of just got annoying how the tone would shift every once in a while, and you didn't know if it was just the producers or too many cooks in the kitchen or what. But I guess House just handled its overall arcs better, just because it was a drama to begin with, and the comedy was
House stayed with its even when they did their major switch of their character change. Because I remember when all of a sudden the 3 main characters all of a sudden were no longer on his team. So all of a sudden one day Jennifer
baby.
Morrison, Jesse Spencer, and Omar Epps, they were no longer on the team, and they were just not acting. And so I kind of thought at first to somebody who, and this is back in the day when we had to wait every week for that episode to come on, So
how do you rank it, like, compared to other shows? Like, did they make it as an obvious effort to change who was going to remain with the show, or was it kind of just more, there's only one person kind of just in charge of the show, and it's the title character, and everyone else, either rides along or dies,
Well, that's kind of what I thought. It must have been the title character, and everybody else just revolves around him.
Total rarity.
And it worked. I mean, they all revolved around him, and it made it work until, like I said, the very end. But I think at that point, everybody just wanted to move on, at the very end. But you were gonna, you had made an interesting kind of retrospect that I thought would be interesting to talk about. You were talking about how Alice is kind of, says whatever's on his mind, but you kind of go to comparing him to Dr. Cox's character from Scrubs, and Dr. Cox kind of spoke his mind and kind of had that same kind of temperament. I mean, what do you kind of think with the comparison to those two characters?
I mean, they're different, but they're similar, definitely. I mean, yeah, House is definitely more just, he just doesn't like people, while Cox is just kind of just hardy har, asshole, frat boy, And
kind of just like wants to. Another thing I think with House is he has serious problems letting people in. I mean, if you look at, and I know that I always bring this up because I'm all about the love connections. So there was a little bit of a attraction in the first maybe 2 seasons between the characters of House and Cameron, and it seemed like that was on the world. Of course, I always go get into all these what they call them, ships. Are you familiar with the ships?
Are you talking just figuratively or
figuratively? The different ships with the couples.
Oh, okay, yeah. It's interesting. It's like they didn't want to make it be soap opera-ish, but yet it was kind of just part of the deal. Like, it was just inevitable. Everyone's going to give each other the eye.
Every show ends up with some kind of a ship. It seems like they always, because those are the ratings, so they've always got to put some couples together. I mean, you've got Law and Order. You've got, even even back in the days of, all those ER, we all had, in House there was, the characters of House and Cameron, and then of course later on it was Cuddy and House, and it was all the will they won't they. It's the will they won't they. Show me a TV show that doesn't have a will they or won't they. I'd love to find me one that does.
Pretty obscure, and it's kind of funny how every kind of person was kind of watching this. Like, I saw this won a few Nickelodeon Teen Choice Awards, and like, geez, yeah, people were watching that.
I know, that was kind of funny. Yeah.
whether they were
Got a-
teens or not. But yeah,
Nickelodeon Teen Choice Award. Yeah.
there's a lot of
really funny.
adult
Um,
humor on this that's not for kids. So yeah.
what did they win those Teen Choice Awards for? What
Oh,
category
it was.
were they? Did
I
you-
think they were nominating both Hugh Laurie and Olivia Wilde. So
Oh, Olivia Wilde got it too. Everybody
Yeah.
loves Olivia Wilde.
Totally.
It was just like. So we know that Cal Penn, we talked about that. He asked to be written out of the show in season 5 so he could take a job as the associate director in the White House of public liaison. Talked
Mhm.
about that. He moved
Liaison.
on. In a past life, Lisa Edelstein was New York's reigning queen of the night. I'm like, okay.
Right.
I have no idea what this means. He was famous in the New York club scene in the 80s. So he was known as a celebutant. Okay, so yeah, I guess that was interesting. House had all his. Do you remember House loved his dramas? Remember he was always watching soaps.
I forgot about that, but yeah.
In patient rooms, one of his favorite things that he always liked to watch was the OC.
It's kind of meta, just having other people.
The thing is that in the show, Fox's show, the OC, the actress Olivia Wilde actually was in that drama. She played Alex Kelly in the OC drama from 2004 to 2006. So that's kind of funny, actually.
That is wild. It's just like, what? So they're all in some universe watching the same show.
They are. They kind of wrap around together. House had many musicians guest starred on House. David Matthews appeared in one of my favorite episodes. You watched that episode?
I don't think I saw that one. I saw the one with David Strathairn one day. I'm like, man, he is crying his guts out. And I think I saw part of the one. Arlie Ermy plays his dad or something. Is that the one?
Trying to see.
I might be remembering it wrong, but I swear he played his dad in one episode, and it was just like, what?
What would we do without Wikipedia? It was one of my favorite episodes. It was called Halfwit, and it was about the savant who played the piano. Did you watch that episode?
I just said I did.
He's having problems and he keeps messing it up. And his dad is the actor from the 70s show, Red, who is the actor who plays Red from the 70s show.
Oh, Kurtwood Smith?
Yes. He plays the father. And that is who plays the piano
well, then who did Arlie Ermy play? Gunnery Sergeant from Full Metal Jacket.
He played House's dad. Yes, he played House's dad.
So
and he did very well.
Now what am I thinking? So you're saying
David go ahead.
So who did the other actor play? Sorry. Because you just said he played dad. So
Black hair, I'm sorry. I'm having screen problems.
Because you're just saying Kurtwood Smith. So he played the Dave Matthews guy's dad?
No, Dave Matthews is the one who played the savant.
Okay, so who?
And the father from the 70s show played the dad of the savant.
That's what I thought I said, but okay.
Yeah. So he was in that, but no, there was like tons of. I got into a website that just put up all these different spam commercials on me. I've got things for guitars popping up. They want me to buy a guitar. They want me to buy microphones. They want me to buy this. I'm like, yeah, I don't think I need that. But they also have, when we had I was looking at this, one of my favorite, Jeremy Renner, was he had a really good episode when he was on there.
I remember really his episode of CSI, and it's just so weird just seeing him again before he hits it big. He becomes the Hurt Locker
Yeah.
Marvel guy. It's like,
They start off kind of small when they go to that. Who else? Ella Fanning was 7 years old when she was
Wow.
on there. Yeah. Michael B. Jordan. We talked about this earlier. Meatloaf was
Right.
in it. He played a dying man. He was in it. John Cho from Harold and Kumar. He had a small little role on there for a little while.
There you go. That's a connection.
Yeah. Carmen Electra. She was in there. She was in a dream sequence.
I think I saw part of that episode. I was like, what the hell? Okay. That's weird.
LL Cool J was in it. Mos Def. He played in, I don't know if you saw the episode Locked In, where the man was in locked in syndrome, and House ends up in an accident and ends up in another hospital, and ends up helping this man and having him transferred to his hospital.
I think I read about that, but I mainly remembered the one movie it was a later season. House ends up. What was the deal with House being in a prison? Do you remember that?
That's the one. I don't know what episode that is, but there's one where he has to go to a prison. He ends up taking the prisoner back to, and
it was a heavily promoted episode. I remember that, and I just could not get away from it. And it was just even more wild because the inmate was Michael Massey, who you might know as the guy who actually shot Brandon Lee on the set of The Crow.
Yeah.
And so it's like go-to bad guy actor, and it's just so kind of surreal. It's like, man, okay, House is in jail. When does this happen?
Joko Ivanovich. I can't pronounce his last name. He had a really good story where he took House and the team hostage. And
there's got to be a Dog Day Afternoon episode.
Yeah, it was a good episode. So yeah, it was just a lot of career launching, episodes that really kind of get in there.
And it was really shot so differently than like most shows. Like you never got that sense that it looks just like every other ER or CSI kind of show. It was kind of just very it was very music video kind of looking at times, but not in a way where it's just covering up a plot that doesn't work. It's like that's just kind of adding to the atmosphere and look.
No, it did, and that's another thing is just the set and the colors with how they filmed.
Very bright blue. And
it was very very pleasing to the eye. It just was very the whole thing.
You feel like you're in an aquarium at the zoo, at a museum half the time.
But to me, it's very very reassuring. I don't know if that makes me a dark person, but I liked all of it. It was.
I think that kind of perfectly shows what his persona is. He's at the bottom of the ocean, and he may or may not come up for air.
Exactly, because that's what
that
his character
sunshine
was.
that shines through the water.
He doesn't, as he's going through, he doesn't quite know. Now, Hugh Laurie, and you may know more about this than I do, as I can kind of go on and look, and I can probably see, but he went on afterwards to have another show.
A bunch of them.
Yeah, I think that one was on Amazon Prime, I believe.
Oh, you're talking about the one Chance that's like on Hulu?
Yeah, on Hulu. Thank you.
I haven't seen it yet. I've heard some good stuff. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't seen it. I saw previews for it. He did Tomorrowland, Holmes and Watson, Veep, and The Night Manager.
I saw The Night Manager, and I was very disappointed because it was just one of those. He's acting alongside Loki actor Hiddleston from Avengers, and it just seemed like Laurie was just like the only guy just keeping it all together. It was just a very bland hostage thriller on an island. And but yeah, Tomorrowland, I know he's in it, but I don't remember him or the movie. But yeah, he seems to just kind of, I know he had some other British show where he was playing a politician covering up some dark stuff about his career that's about to leak. So he's definitely going to keep getting all these more unusual dramatic roles. Do you remember him in the movie Street Kings?
No.
Really? Okay. So he played an internal affairs guy in that, and it was just so much fun because that also came out in '08. So yeah, it was kind of a big deal. I'm like, hey, I'm seeing Dr. House curse up a storm in this movie, you know? There's a guy who's trying to root out bad cops. So it's very interesting how he just kind of just pops up and just comes and goes, and basically, again, this House character at the second stage of his career just kind of gave him some more colorful roles.
Lisa Edelstein, she had a couple different
Yeah.
roles. She
Girlfriend's
was
Guide.
in a Girlfriend's Guide. Did you see that?
I
Did you
only-
watch that show?
I only saw clips, and I heard it was very edgy and outrageous. So, did you see it?
No, I did not see that.
Okay.
And she has a minor role on. I remember this on Good Doctor. She did have a minor role.
So there you go.
Yes, it was very minor. But no, she was very good in it. I was kind of hoping she'd stay. I kind of liked her on that.
I guess who Laurie reminds me of the most nowadays is probably Damien Lewis, who many might remember from Band of Brothers and Homeland.
Yes,
That's
he's
similar
very good.
guy who's just can be a chameleon, regardless of whether or not you know him for just one or two or just 5 roles. And the same kind of career is like goes from being just a bit part actor and various comedic stuff. I mean, I went through
And
the whole.
also, somebody else I didn't know had an accent until I heard him open his mouth.
Ooh.
Doesn't he have a British accent?
Yeah.
An accent? Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean,
British.
somebody I thought forever was American, and then he opened his mouth, and I was like, oh goodness.
You liar.
Yeah, just like with Hugh, just like what? Yeah, kind of.
I did go for the whole series of Spooks, which is known in the U.S. as MI5. It was this cool British spy show that ran for about 10 years, and Hugh Laurie's in that real briefly in like season 2 or something as like a British High Council Commissioner or something like that, and I thought it was just so much fun. That was probably as that show came over years later, and no one put 2 and 2 together. They still kind of just knew Hugh from just his, if they had PBS and saw one of his British sitcoms, or just again his small American movie roles. So it's just interesting how this just kind of jump started the next thing, and he gets all this extra freedom to choose the roles he wants.
He can kind of do what he wants. I mean, he's made quite a name for himself. One of my favorite characters one of my favorite characters on the show is Jennifer Morrison as Dr. Allison Cameron. She went on to be in a lot of shows that I really enjoyed her on How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah, and to see her and Cal Penn both doing both those shows around the same time is like they pretty much had it all figured out. They could. Yeah.
They did. They did. And I guess she was on Once Upon a Time for a while. My daughter watched that show and really likes that.
Mm-hmm.
And what is she currently doing? Do you know if she's...
She's kind of vanished, and I keep seeing her be put on lists of people who are difficult to work with, but I've never heard that. So I think it's just clickbait.
I did find out that her and I did not realize this, but her and Jess, I don't remember his name. I'm so bad with names. Her and Jess Spencer, they actually dated for a year.
So there you go.
They dated for a year during the show, but they broke up. A little gossip there for you.
Oh, there you go. Okay. Oh, that's right. She was in the movie Bombshell with Charlize Theron. Everybody, she's in a few other movies and doing some voiceovers. So
she's doing something, and she had a 3-year relationship with Prison Break star Amaury Nolasco.
Amaury Nolasco. Okay. So hanging out with them.
Oh, yeah. So I guess she's kind of just doing her thing right now.
Likes those bad boys. Yeah.
I guess so. I really like Peter Jacobson. I think he's just a really good actor. I really like him.
Yeah.
I liked him in The Colony. He was in The Americans for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I just really like him.
Well, and all these actors are very, I guess you could say, just very straight-faced, and they're all. It's just so funny how Jacobson or Omar Epps would almost always just kind of get the long groan of, oh dear, what is House going to say next?
They just have really good. They're just good. Their characters are just really good.
Mm-hmm.
Just like that. So what other really some facts to the head thrown
Would
at
you
us
call
here.
this show kind of European in a way? And because I mean, it never really feels like a typical American show.
You know, I think that it was before its time, if that's what you mean, when it first came out. I think it's something that America had not seen, and that's why I think that it was so popular. So
It's
yeah,
just like too good for any country. It's just like rowdy detective, or I mean doctor. Why did I say detective? But I mean, 04 is already kind of a big year. I mean, you got The Office, you got Boston Legal. So I guess everybody was pretty much just ready to just see just a dysfunctional workplace that's kind of funny, you know. They come home from a long day at work and watch primetime TV, and they see all these guys who are misbehaving and doing the stuff they might secretly want to say. But yeah, I guess.
So go ahead.
Do you feel like this is a good place to wrap it all up? I guess.
No, you have something to give me. Dun dun dun.
Okay.
I have a request. We have been doing our medical shows for a while here now,
Right.
and I want to know from you what your top 5 favorite medical dramas are, ranked from number 5 down to number 1.
Okay. You're sure you want me to go first?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
So number 5 to number 1. If it makes it easier, we could do 3, but yeah, it'd be nice to get 5 in there so I can kind of know where you're at.
Okay. Well.
I don't have a drum. You can like put a drum roll in yourself.
So yeah, I'm gonna say Chicago Fire and Med are 5 through 4. and
Chicago Fire
Med.
and Chicago Med. So that is a Dick Wolf series.
Yeah. You could technically count it as just one, but whatever. 5 through 4. So, and then free is gonna be Third Watch, and then 2 through 1 are gonna be Chicago Hope and St. Elsewhere. So there you go.
Number 1 is St. Elsewhere.
Yeah.
You don't even have Scrubs in this.
Yeah. Sorry. I'm a dark dude.
You are a dark dude.
Those shows are even darker than us, so yeah.
I'm gonna call you. I am like really making you do boring ass shows, aren't I? Jeez. I'm like taking you to Disney World. Boring.
All good. So what is number 5 for you?
Number 5 for shows, medical shows. Okay. Number 5 for me is going to be
ER.
I think it's going to be ER. Yeah. And then
4.
Number 4, I'm actually writing them down here real quick. So I'm going to go ER, and then I'm going to go. I don't think I've watched enough medical shows for to do this. Are there enough medical shows out there? Okay, so then I'm going to go. No, I'm going to actually, no, I'm going to change my mind. I'm going to do number 5. I'm going to put St. Elsewhere for number 5. Number 4 is going to be ER.
Alrighty. So you switched them around.
Yes.
Number on here.
Number 3 is going to be. And you're going to have to clip this because I have to look something up real quick. So you're going to have to like clip this when you do it. So hold on. The power of technology is so wonderful.
Fun. Alrighty. I got another chat that's put on hold. So 3 through 1.
Okay. So okay. My number 2 is New Amsterdam. Number 3 is New Amsterdam. Number 2 is Grey's Anatomy. Number 1 is Scrubs.
Drum roll, please. Gotta be house.
Finished it. I'm good. I gotta find a darker show to watch.
You could do Bones. You could do Any other thing using medical science?
I forgot about Bones. Is Bones really a drama?
I guess it's
is
more
Bones a
mystery
hospital show though?
comedy. Yeah, I mean, Carson Jordan you could definitely count. So I mean, shit.
Yeah.
Niles. That's got
Have you watched New Amsterdam?
I still need to. I got the DVDs.
It's on your list. It may not be dark enough for you.
Oh, I just am already trying to finish up 5 other things. So yeah.
Oh, dude, real quick, have you watched the Squid Game yet
Nope.
on Netflix? Have you
need
heard
to.
about it?
I know what it's about, but I have not made time for it because I'm already finishing up 5 other things. So
I heard it's bad. All right, well, get up. You have to go do some recording, you said?
Yep. So
Okay.
number 1, are you going to just go with House or is it going to be
It's going to
Scrubs?
be...
You can only pick one. So.
I don't know. I'm
Okay,
decisive.
so here, I got one. So just go. Which one ended less disappointing? Sounds like Scrubs pretty much ended pretty bad.
No,
one's revisiting Fine.
it'd have to be Scrubs. Number 1's going to have to be Scrubs because it's going to have to be Scrubs. I'm sorry, House. It's going to have to be Scrubs.
We like it. It's just there's a lot of competition, but it's
There
good
is
enough.
a lot of competition. How can one choose when it's all they do is put out new TV shows on a daily basis?
Right. Everyone's trying to one up or be heavily inspired by the other or be a combo of 5
I mean,
other shows.
back in my day, in like the 80s.
Rock and Morty.
Yeah. But back in the 80s, that's all we ever did. You didn't have to worry about this. So, I don't know. It says, did something happen? Somebody's waiting for you. So, this is the end of our podcast.
Okay. Thank you ever so much for joining the chat. It was a blast.
No, I had a really good time. And yeah, we'll get together some other time. And thank you for discussing House with me. I had a really good time.
You rocked it.
All right. Thank you so much. Go and have fun
Thank you.
with your friends. Okay.
Yeah, let me know what you want to try next.
All right. We'll do. We'll talk to you later.
We'll return after these messages.
Hey, feeling down? Feeling low? Not enough podcasts about movies in your life? Why not try
They must be destroyed on sight.
the new Podcast Cure-All? Sure to get you right with the world and on a path to better living. We have exploitation, we have Italian horror, we have zombies, we have slashers, we have crime films, we have spaghetti westerns, we even have sci-fi and sex comedies. So take a dose of
They must be destroyed on sight.
as needed and let the hosts, Lee Russell, Daniel Harper, Paul Romali, and the odd guest host cure what ails you.
Warning, may cause atrophy, African consumption, black fever, bone shave, chin cough, colic, cramp colic, dropsy of the brain, elephantitis, grocer's itch, jaundice, mania, miasma, mortification, palsy, Pott's disease, rheumatism, scurvy, St. Anthony's fire, summer complaint, and worm fit in some people. Consult a physician before listening.
Did you ever see a film at such a young age it left you traumatized with cinematic wounds? Necrophilia. It's a dead issue, man. Don't push it. Cinema Psyops is a weekly podcast documenting an ongoing experiment on the mind of an unwilling test subject.
No one should have to watch this movie.
Oh, no one should have to watch this?
No one should have to watch this movie.
Surprisingly, it's not a topic that a lot of people really want to tackle.
I'm shocked, prudes.
I know, really.
Right?
It's the next sexual frontier that no one wants to explore.
I am, in the most sincerest of senses, disappointed in you.
It takes a powerful goddess like Connie, jam her arm down the monster's throat and kill it. Oh, I'm still tripping out over that. Even as a kid, I was like, I gotta find a girl like that. Every week, I get a new look of disappointment that I never thought I could get out of her.
Unimaginable. At 12 years old, you should not be watching this movie.
Obviously.
At 13, you should not be. 14, you shouldn't be. I'm not entirely sure even 17-year-olds should be watching this.
Just because you're offended by something doesn't mean that you have the right to demand that it doesn't exist. Watching this film again, I had all of this like little nerd glee with everything that kept
Little
popping up.
history doll popping up
Absolutely.
at you.
So I totally loved this film.
Hey, I know why you couldn't see that. It's because your brain's warped from watching this shit at 12 years old.
Yeah, this is a rough movie. I told you ahead of time when we were getting ready to do it that it was
How
going to be
did
a
you
rough
watch
one.
this shit at 12?
Because physical wounds heal, cinematic ones don't. Listen to Cinema Psyops.
Hey everybody, I'm Corey.
And I'm Zach, and we're the hosts of Podcasting After Dark.
a cast dedicated to late-night horror and sci-fi of the 80s and 90s, often found on HBO and Cinemax.
You know, the movies your parents didn't want you watching as a kid. You can find us every other week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, and Stitcher.
This is what you want.
This is what you get.
It's time, let's check our cue, baby. Pair it with a couple brews, baby. We love good movies. We love the bad ones too. So we watch them all and pass their lessons on to you. Oh yeah. Everything I learned from movies helps to make life a little bit groovy. With a one-last plot holes of gratuitous movies. It's time to get busy with your friend Steve and Izzy at eilfm.podbean.com.
Welcome to Who Was She podcast. I am your host, Tara Jabari. After a decade working in documentaries, marketing, and all things digital media, I found that podcasting is a strong medium to share stories. After years of producing for others, I decided to start my own biographical podcast. Who Was She will focus on the life of a woman throughout Baha'i history. The first season is about Lydia Zemenov. Lydia's story explores the subjects of the power of language and faith. Her father invented the universal language Esperanto, and she came from a Jewish family and became a Baha'i. She grew up during World War I and was killed during World War II in a concentration camp, despite heroic efforts to save her life. How can one person's life intersect with so many others, connect across borders, and inspire a biography which inspired this podcast? Over the next few weeks, I will share her story with you and the lives that were most affected by her and those who affected her life as well. They include her father, Ludwig Zemenov, her spiritual mother, American journalist Martha Root, and the Baha'i German soldier Fritz Mako, who worked for the resistance undercover while having to serve the Nazi Party. I want to thank the author Wendy Heller and George Ronald Publishing for their blessing to let me use Heller's biography, Lydia, The Life of Lydia Zemenov, Daughter of Esperanto, as a main and instrumental resource for this podcast. So please subscribe and learn about this amazing woman who traveled through 3 continents in an effort to bring unity through the power of language. You can also find more information on our Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest at Who Was She Podcast. Music was composed and performed by Sam Red. I am your host, Tara Jabari. Join us next time as we begin our journey about Lydia Zemenov.
Are you sick of the same old stale podcasts? Well, then join Vanessa and Darren as they dissect movies of all kinds. The 2 lifelong cinema lovers bring their favorites, curiosities, and first-time watches to the operating table and inject them with a healthy dose of snark. Then there's the waiting room, where they examine books and short stories. So just look for them on Apple Podcasts and where fine podcasts are available. They're part of the Legion Podcast Network. Follow them on Twitter at VDClinicPod. Join them on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/VDClinicPod. Or email them at vdclinicpod@gmail.com. They're ready to cure what ails you. And still, they just might be a little contagious.
Hi there. It's Heather from the Watching Netflix Without You podcast. Did you know that there are over 1,200 Netflix original feature films and documentaries? and that number is only growing. So I've made it my mission to watch as many as I possibly can. Then, with a delightful guest or guests, disclaimer, more often than not my brother Ryan, we spend an episode rating, reviewing, and discussing a film at length. The first half of every episode is spoiler-free for those who haven't seen it yet, and in the second half, after a very clear spoiler warning, we dive into it. And that's really about it. You can listen to Watching Netflix Without You on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and more.
We now continue with our program.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a jacked up review show.